Live. It is Valentine's Day, and we've been doing a lot of work on the audio portion of the show. Last week there wasn't an episode because we had a problem with the internet. I uploaded kind of like a tech description of the past, present, and future of the show. Hopefully that'll clear things up to the people who think that we're incompetent and then all you have to do is plug your phone line and a camera into your computer and you magically have a show like this. It's a little bit more than that. Today we're going to try to do a 90-minute show.
Awesome.
I'm Matt Dillahunty, hosting the Atheist Experience. Joining me this week, Don Baker.
Hey, good to be here.
The king of the failures of religions.
Yay!
So, as we're going to try and do the 90-minute show, I want to go over a couple things before we get started, and Don will have a presentation. Our new phone line is in and working. We did a full-on streaming test of it just an hour or so ago. It's 6 lines, and the way we're going to try to work this is to have no more than 3 atheists online so that we have options to give theists priority. Because if we filled up all the lines with 6 atheists, then all theists are going to get is a busy signal. And I think while there are a lot of great conversations that we can have with other non-believers, and we will have them, I think probably the crux of the show is the interactions with people who believe. That's how we got to kind of the
that's
atheist
how we got
experience.
to be where we are. Yeah.
Couple quick notes. We hope for a speedy and full recovery for Richard Dawkins, who unfortunately suffered a minor stroke this past week. He's released an audio kind of greeting that he recorded to talk about what actually happened and how he's getting physical therapy and stuff moving forward. His mind is all intact, and I didn't think his voice sounded very slurred at all, considering that he's got mild movement problems, not quite paralysis, I guess, on his left side. So we wish him a speedy and full recovery. And also, Ken Ham tweeted out about, or sent a message out on Facebook about Dawkins. And I thought that was really sweet that, he would, except that Ken Ham didn't bother to say anything at all about wishing for a speedy recovery or even praying for a speedy recovery. It was it wasn't a ha ha ha, but it was opportunistic garbage where he basically just says, Dawkins has a stroke, let's all pray that he meets God. And I understand.
That's pretty rude.
It's, that he finds God, not that he goes to meet God, I suppose. And I get that that's consistent with his doctrine, his theology, but it would have been so much more, pleasant, classy, even to just say, let's pray for a speedy and full recovery. But that's what happens when you care less about this life and people who disagree with you than you do about the next life, which is an epic failure of Christianity. And the last bit of news that I want to touch on, Justice Scalia is dead. And there are a lot of people who are overjoyed and tap dancing, and trust me, I get it. I love the Mark Twain quote about, I didn't attend the funeral, but I sent a note that I approved of it. And there's a quote from someone else that where, I hadn't killed anybody, but I've read a few obituaries with great pleasure. I'm not happy that an individual has died, but I am not the slightest bit sad, and am probably happy that an individual who was a problem is no longer a problem. I'm glad he's not on the bench. I understand, there are lots of people who cared about him. He's got 9 kids, a big family. He was good friends with Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who's still on the bench, and they were just about as diametrically opposed or in opposition as you could find in 2 Supreme Court justices, and yet they found a way to be friends and work together and even vacation together. And I think there's a lesson in that about, painting too broadly, that this individual who most of us only knew from what many times we considered to be absolutely terrible opinions written on behalf of the Supreme Court, was more than that, and more than that to other people. So I understand that, hey, there's people who are happy, and by all means, you feel whatever you feel. But I'm not happy he's dead. I'm just or I'm not happy that he died. I am happy that he's no longer on the bench, and that's the unfortunate consequence of having a position where you're appointed for life. Death is the most likely way that you're going to be removed from that, barring, stepping down.
Right.
So on that note, we'll get the show started. And Don has, is this a failure?
This is a failure show.
It's a failure show.
Yet another failure show. This show is called Slime and the Religion Machine, which is a bit of a nod to Marvin Zindler in Houston, Texas, who did the Best Little Whorehouse in Texas. He was the reporter in real life on which that was based. Anyway.
Which reminds me, this has nothing to do with anything, but because you mentioned it, while we were out antique shopping, I saw a hand-drawn, framed, large, done-in-pencil sketch of the Bunny Ranch.
Okay.
And I almost bought it. But I'd have to tell everybody what it is, because it just looks like, hey, here's a sketch of some trailers pushed together.
Okay. Anyway, that's enough of an aside. So this is, by my counting, the 36th failure show, Slime and the Religion Machine. So the idea here is you can tell a lot about a movement by the character of the people promoting it. And you gave me a great intro with the Ken Ham thing. It's like, okay, well, if he had a better character, then he wouldn't need to do that. And it's a bit of a slimy way to promote yourself. I had another example, which was the Center for Medical Progress had that fraudulent citizen journalism video to advance their cause, trying to claim that Planned Parenthood to the highest bidder, that sort of thing. And the producers committed felonies as part of that production. And even the name of their organization is fraudulent because they have no scientists or physicians in their organization. So they're just sort of telling us that they have no morals and they're happy to lie to promote their cause. And that just tells you a whole lot about the type of movement that they're trying to promote. It's not black and white, but it casts a lot of sort of doubt on what they're trying to do.
There's a grand irony here as well, and that is that Matthew 7:16 says, "By their fruits you shall know them." Mm-hmm. And yes, you could certainly say that if you begin with a particularly narrow mindset for Christianity, then you could say that Ken's post about Dawkins is a good fruit. You're seeing his actions and that he's encouraging a belief in a God, but it sets aside the entire significance of caring about other human beings. Mm-hmm. And when I see character like that, I'm happy to look at that verse in Matthew and say, yeah, by your words, by your fruits, I'll know you. And you're a terrible human being quite a lot of the time.
Right. So murder, lies, thuggery, manipulation, and other slimy tactics are part and parcel of the promoters of religions, including Christianity. And, technically, a sleazebag might have special knowledge of the universe or might know something, some sort of handed down knowledge from God, but it's more likely they're working on a con. And why would God choose somebody like that to be their spokesperson?
Or anybody.
Yeah,
I don't know.
Right.
I don't know why God needs a spokesperson at all. I talked about this when I went through the Moses Exodus story a little bit. God comes to Moses and says, "Hey, I want you to go be my spokesperson." And Moses is like, "Hey, I'm not good at this talk stuff." And he's like, "Okay, well, you've got a brother who can talk, so go and get him, and we'll have him be your spokesperson. So you're my spokesperson, and he's yours. And so I'll tell you what to tell him, so that he can go and speak on my." What?
What a circus.
I mean, why does God need to play telephone? And why did he pick an incompetent person who's not good at speaking to be his spokesperson? Oh, you're right, Moses, you're not good at that talking stuff. What was I thinking?
Makes a good story, I guess. So yeah, in the Bible, there's all sorts of slimy sort of characters. Yahweh himself's pretty slimy. He's a misanthropic, genocidal maniac, among other things. Jesus, follow him or be tortured. He lies about his return. He gives bad financial advice. He encourages family strife. Adam and his progeny had to have been inbred if you believe that they were the only human beings around. Cain kills Abel to earn God's favor. Abraham whores out his wife or half-sister, happy to kill his kid to suck up to God. Didn't have to do that, but happy to do it. Lot, who is called just and righteous later in the Bible, makes babies with his married daughters.
All of that was their fault.
Oh, it was their fault.
Yeah, they got him drunk.
No, but if you're so drunk that you don't notice your daughter bouncing on you,
Yeah, I question the actual ability to perform in that situation.
Right,
but
exactly. It was a miracle. Okay. Elijah sending bears to maul 42 misbehaving teenagers.
Oh, and we skipped Moses murdering.
Moses murdering. Cheats God out of the foreskin sacrifice. There's lots of kind of creepy, weird stuff in the Bible. Some of the people that are considered paragons of virtue: Mother Teresa, Martin Luther. Many of the popes were very questionable. I talked about Teresa the last time I was on. Martin Luther was famous for his anti-Semitism, instigated the Peasants' War, influenced Hitler, so he's pretty slimy character. The Pope that started the witch burnings to stave off death, was alleged to have drunk the blood of 10-year-old boys, killing them in the process. Very pro-life. Anyway, and we have a lot of slimy Christian leaders. Boy, you just follow the news, like Pat Robertson. He's a fake faith healer, philanderer, participated in shady diamond and gold deals, among other things, many other things. We have Jim Baker, Jimmy Stewart, Ted Haggard.
Jimmy
Swaggart, sorry.
Yeah. That sex thing really seems to trip up a lot of God's representatives, and yet we keep going after this abstinence-only education on behalf of the God botherers, and yet their ministers can't seem to even make a decent attempt to, not go around to meth dens and hiring prostitutes and
Right. And it goes on, and I'm really just sort of scratching the surface here. If you watch the news, you'll see lots and lots of this. One study said that 4% of Catholic priests have been accused of abuse with a minor. It's pretty sad. There is a lovely section in the Free Thought Today, which is a paper produced by the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and every month they have at least 2 full pages of what they call black-collar crime, and there are little articles on this and that, and I'll read a couple of them. It's hard to find one that isn't related to sex abuse. Joseph Raleigh, 34, Miller, South Dakota, attempted commercial sex trafficking of a child, enticement of a minor using the internet, and 2 counts of soliciting a minor for sex. He was arrested and charged. He faces, he's a pastor at the First Baptist Church there and faces state and federal charges. So that's lovely. Convicted. Maxie Andrews, 55, Thomasville, Alabama, pleaded guilty to multiple counts of rape, sexual abuse, attempted rape, sodomy, and sexual torture on the day his trial was supposed to start. A plea agreement calls for him to serve 15 years in prison. So he was convicted. Sentenced. Roger Wakely, 73, Exeter, England, 13 years in prison after being found guilty of 25 counts of indecent assault and 2 counts of attempted buggery, all involving 4 male victims under age 16. Crimes were committed from the 60s to the 80s. He was a pastor and teacher at the Bishop I Church of England School and a grammar school. Lawsuits settled. The Catholic Diocese of Milwaukee will pay $21 million to victims of clergy sex abuse under a plan approved by the U.S. bankruptcy judge Susan Kelly. Most of the money will be split by the 355 victims, with a separate class of 104 victims getting about $2,000 each. So it goes on, and it's actually 2.5 pages of stuff. And this is, every month this is coming out, and there's no shortage of this sort of thing. And so this sort of begs the question of, boy, gosh, this is awfully pervasive in slimy behavior, and it kind of speaks to the lack of ethics among clergy and among believers. And the slime is rationalized a bunch of ways. There's an idea that belief in God makes you a better person. Bunk is false, patently false. And this idea of temptation by the devil is just a lame rationalization, only believable by the gullible. So slime appears to be part and parcel of Christianity, which lacks any effective way to clean it up. Apparently, it's just going on, and that's another failure.
And in the fair and balanced portion of the show,
okay, you're going to deflate me again.
So these actions, first of all, aren't exclusive to religions. I mean, we have.
That is true.
There are atheists who, I know of one now who is been accused of sexual assault of a minor and will face trial. The reason for pointing this out is that nobody's, or almost nobody, I suppose, is holding up saying, atheism is results in absolutely pure behavior.
I'm not saying that at all. No.
So the fact that these are cited as failures doesn't get us any closer to determining whether or not the theological claims of the religion are true. But it does address this issue of whether or not one is likely to be, a better person, more moral, etc. under these. But the bigger problem here, in many cases, which you cited in some of the black-collar crime, is that there's no institution set up for atheism such that if I were to be caught doing something incredibly illegal, that the organization would then shield me and shuffle me off to some other TV show somewhere else where I could continue to do it. And we don't have any mechanism where we are intentionally trying to thwart police investigations because we don't have some high and mighty image and cathedral type environment that is more important to us than people. And so as humanists, I love Don. We've known each other for, 11, 12 years, something like that. If he got caught embezzling or doing something else, I'm not going to say, ooh, we need to hide this from the public. We can't let anybody know. No, Don, you're going to jail. I will, if I have any information, I will testify against your ass.
And I would expect that.
That's the difference.
Yep, your integrity is valuable.
Now, what we know is that good people can be good, or people. I don't even think it's fair to label people as good. Trying to summarize somebody's entire character is flawed. We are all capable of doing good things, and we are all capable of doing horrible things. The difference comes in pretending that your religious beliefs can or should somehow place you outside this realm of human failings or insulate your particular denomination against horrific
or
crimes.
This claim that you have a special relationship to God. God is this paragon of, or the author of morality, and why are you screwing up if you're following God? Why is it so easy to find these things?
Quite often, I mean, it's become kind of a cliche that whatever politician is most vocally anti-gay is probably closeted.
Yeah, protesting too much. Right?
We know that's not the case. We know that there are people who are definitely straight and definitely anti-gay who speak, along those lines. But this idea that the religions discourage aspects of humanity that are natural and normal and unavoidable. When you tell teenagers, just say no, you are doing them a gross disservice.
Right. Or sex. Don't think about it.
Can you not remember what it was like when you were a teenager and hormones were out of control and you had the opportunity to do a little something? Did it work for you to just say no? I mean, do you really think that your children have advanced so much beyond the normal scientific urges to reproduce that abstinence-only education is remotely viable?
Well, and the religion infantilizes people, right? Yeah. It wants to be their parent, and they're never really growing up and learning their own sort of responsibility.
It also sets up an insulated environment of forgiveness. So all the people around you believe the same things you do, and you have done something terrible, and you can be forgiven by God, which within the religion is far more important than being forgiven by the person that you've actually wronged or making amends or being, incarcerated for it. It is God is the ultimate arbiter of whether or not you are forgiven of something. And that does nobody any good. In fact, I think it is a gross evil because what it can in many cases set up is a cycle of behavior forgiveness, behavior forgiveness, behavior forgiveness, where nothing is ever resolved, nothing is ever changed. People don't get the therapy, the treatment, the direction that they need to live a much healthier, more productive life, because the religion needs to keep them in this cycle. It is absolutely vile.
Absolutely.
So we're going to go ahead and start taking callers here. We've got Carlos in Lima. How are you?
Oh my gosh, how are you guys? Greetings here from South America.
We're doing well. I'm glad the phone line reaches the world.
Yeah, I'm here on the computer, and I just want to start saying that you guys are awesome. I mean, I've been hearing you for about, let's say, a year. And you know what? My father's a pastor. Okay, so I grew up as kind of gave my life to Jesus when I was like 12. I really felt it, I went up and everything. And when I went to college, I started doubting things, and I really felt bad, I started crying just because I was doubting Jesus. It was such a horrible time. I thought that I was going to go to hell, but more than that, I just thought that, I was doing something wrong.
Yeah, there's a guilt cycle imposed there where they set expectations that you can't live up to, and when you start to doubt or start to fail, you immediately feel guilty that there's something wrong with you. I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And at church, I started making questions, and people just got really angry, and people started just telling me, well, are you angry with God? What's your intention here? You have some sin in you. And I was like, what's wrong here? I'm just asking questions and you're not giving me answers.
Yep.
So right now I'm in that phase. I'm okay with myself. I'm with peace. I can talk to my father now. We sometimes argue, he gets kind of angry sometimes, but we do talk about it. But I just had some questions for you, Matt. I want to talk first about the Big Bang.
Okay.
As I understand, and please correct me because I think that you might know a little bit more, it's kind of like an explosion or an expansion that was created by a singularity. Am I right there?
That's probably close enough for what we need to talk about.
Okay, and according to the theory of relativity, time and space had a finite beginning. This is from some studies from Hawkins and Ellis, I think, that was published in 1970.
Yeah, so first of all, when it comes to things like Big Bang cosmology, what we're talking about when we talk about science is not a pronouncement of truth. It's not a declaration that X happened and we have proved it and this is necessarily true. What science is doing is building models that describe reality based as best as we can based on the information that we currently have. And so when you have something like the Big Bang, which you can't directly observe, we don't have a time machine, there are differing opinions about whether or not it is right to consider that time began there, or whether we're talking about a local presentation of time or our local universe. But since we don't have a time machine, so far as I'm aware, the way that we go about investigating to confirm that our model of the Big Bang is accurate is to look for the observations we would expect if it were true, things like the cosmic microwave background radiation. And so the model makes a prediction about what we would see when we view that cosmic microwave background radiation. And then when we are able to actually test and observe that, we can determine if it's consistent with the model. And so far, it's consistent with the model. And so the view from science is that Big Bang cosmology is confirmed, or as confirmed as we can right now. That doesn't mean that in the future we might get more information that puts a new spin on it so that our understanding of what happened with regard to universal origins will change. And what tends to happen though is that you reach certain points where you can refine and improve this model, but it's absurdly unlikely that you will overturn it completely, that you will find that you were fundamentally wrong about everything. Because all it is here are observations, here are predictions about observations, do they match?
If it were really wrong, we'd know already. Yeah, go ahead.
So following the Hubble's law and what I think it was Wilson said about, the thermal radiation, and they got a Nobel Prize. So following that thought, singularity, when it started, it didn't appear in space because space didn't exist. It's because there was no space. So my question is, what did that singularity, or where did it appear in? If there was no space, there was no time, there was no matter. So you're going to say probably, I don't know, and I think that's a valid answer. But I mean, it's something that is completely outside of anything that we can test.
So,
There's nothing.
So one of the things is that, and I will happily say, I don't know, and I'm not necessarily convinced that anybody knows or has a good explanation for this, except that when we talk about the Big Bang, the essential immediate expansion of the universe, it didn't have to, it is space. It is matter and space, and it is space expanding. And so you're kind of asking the question of, well, what is space expanding into? And we don't know, but it may not be that there's any requirement that it's expanding into anything if it's the sum total of everything. But models like the multiverse offer different views on this. And I think this is, one of those questions that I definitely couldn't explain to you and don't have a good answer for. So you're calling the wrong show there. Call Sean Carroll or an actual astrophysicist.
But that's not my point. My point is that this singularity, which we are not, I'm not going to get any answers here, but which, let's say that let's follow those models, didn't happen in a time or space, because as we said before, time and space had a beginning. This singularity, it sounds like kind of a God which is outside completely of any testing, because we can't make.
How does it sound? How does it sound like a God? I mean, because what you're basically saying there is, hey, there's this proposal that a magical, untestable, unfalsifiable being who exists outside of space-time produced this event, and then you're saying what we observe is consistent with that. But if the proposition is unfalsifiable, it is useless. Mm-hmm. You have no grounds by which to determine if it's possible or if it's probable or to calculate any kind of probabilities about it. The thing about Big Bang cosmology and anything else within science is that these propositions are falsifiable. If the Big Bang model had made predictions about the microwave background radiation and then we observe it and it's not consistent with it, then we would have demonstrated that our model is in fact wrong. There's no way to do that with a God, and so, or anything supernatural. And so at most all you're ever saying is, yep, this thing that has been described would be capable of it. Well, so would universe creating pixies and any number of things. Plus, we don't even know enough to know about what could possibly have done this, or if it was inevitable.
I know, but what I'm saying is that it is one of the possibilities.
No. It is a philosophical possibility in the sense that you can't prove that it's not a possibility. But that doesn't make it an epistemic possibility. That doesn't mean that we have good reason to think that this is actually possible. I mean, we could say that it's philosophically possible for me to sprout wings and fly out of the studio. And we're only saying that in the sense that we can't prove that it's impossible. But when we talk about whether or not it is an epistemic possibility, that we have any good reason to think this thing could happen, we have no good reason to think that I could ever sprout wings and fly out of the studio.
Okay, just to close my view on that, it just sounds to me, because it's kind of like a personal thing, that just to think that something had to happen without time or space.
Sure.
So this singularity.
How many other things can you imagine that could meet that criteria as well?
No, that's the thing. I don't know.
Well, would you at least accept that there are other things that you could imagine, like universe creating pixies?
But wouldn't that mean that there is matter? I mean, to exist.
No, pixies are matterless, and exist outside of space-time.
And without time, space, without gravity?
Yeah, all you're doing is saying, in order for this to happen, what seems to be most consistent with it is something that is not tied to space-time produced this effect, which is already a problem because cause and effect requires time. So even the discussions about it are problematic. But I understand the idea that, this God proposal, for me, this seems like a plausible explanation. But how many more plausible explanations are there, and how did you determine which of those you're going to accept?
Can I come at this from a different angle?
Sure.
Nearly every time this cosmology stuff comes up in a atheism discussion, it's some sort of argument from ignorance. If the atheist doesn't know exactly how the universe came to be, then that must open the door for God. And the real question is, what evidence is there for a God? And let's look at that. And the time to believe in a God is when there's sufficient evidence for it. And yeah, there's all sorts of scientific mysteries. You can go look at the quantum stuff, or you can go look at the cosmology stuff, or you can go look at the complexity of the brain or whatever. You can find all sorts of mysteries, but that's not evidence for a God. That's just evidence that we don't know everything about everything. And that's okay. That's where we are. And as we learn more, we chip away at this God of the gaps thing. But it sounds like somebody somewhere has accepted the burden of proof to say, if I don't know how the universe came to be, then your God thing gets a free pass. And I don't buy that.
Okay, my intention was not proving that there is a God because of that. It was just that it is a possibility for many people. Now,
no. This idea that something is
like a personal thing.
Okay, people may think it's a possibility, but how did they determine that it's possible?
So it's impossible that there be a God?
No. I'm not saying it's impossible. I'm saying if you're claiming that it's possible that there's a God who exists outside of space and time, how did you determine that that is actually possible?
Because it's not impossible.
No. The fact that we haven't demonstrated that something is conclusively impossible doesn't mean that it's actually epistemically possible.
Okay, I agree on your answer. I have one more question.
So okay.
No, it's okay.
That's fine. We can move on.
I'm not stubborn. I know what you want to say, and okay, that's all right for now.
Okay.
I would have to look into it more.
Well, here's an example that I used the other day that may make this a little more clear. There are two detectives that are called in to work on a case, and they walk in, and it's a closed room, and there's a dead body in the middle of the room, and everything was locked and sealed from the inside. One of the detectives is, doesn't buy into anything supernatural because there's been no demonstration that the supernatural is possible. There's been no demonstration that it is actual or that it could be a plausible explanation for this. The other detective does buy into supernatural claims and thinks that it's possible for someone to walk through a wall simply because you can't demonstrate that it's impossible for someone to walk through a wall. Now, those two detectives are going to go about solving that case and every other case that is similar or can be derived from that in two completely different ways. Which one is more likely to come up with the right answer?
Well, okay, I'll have to listen to that again on video because it cut a little bit, but...
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
All right, well, we appreciate the call, especially you holding on so long.
I have one more question, just one.
Okay.
You said that everything that you believe in is because you have proof. Is that correct?
My goal is to not believe anything without good reason. I'm not quite sure what you mean by proof. It's not necessarily impossible that I might believe things without good reasons.
Than something that's always...
If somebody can show me that I believe something and I shouldn't, that I don't have good reasons for it, then I stop believing it.
Not that you don't have reasons, but if you believe in something without having proof, like for instance.
What do you mean by proof?
If you have a wife, do you have a wife? I think you're married. Yes.
Yes, I have a wife.
Okay. Does she love you?
I don't know.
Oh, come on, man.
Would you all right, let me finish.
It's Valentine's
Let me finish
Day.
Let me finish. Stop and let me finish because you don't know the first damn thing about my relationship. I may actually not think my wife loves me. Do you want me to answer your questions honestly?
Hey, but don't get angry, man. I'm just saying.
I'm angry because I'm trying to explain something and everybody keeps talking.
Yeah,
You
don't get
asked,
angry, man.
do I believe that my wife loves me? And I said, I don't know. And I was going to continue before I was interrupted by the laughter. It depends on what you mean. I can tell you this, my wife tells me that she loves me, and she acts in ways which are consistent with her loving me. I can't read her mind to know what she actually thinks about me. And so the only information that I have to go on, I evaluate that. And both of those things, those are observations that I make, which are consistent with observations I would make from someone who loves me.
So
I am convinced that the most probable, explanation for my wife acting as if she loves me and telling me that she loves me is that it's more likely that she actually does love me. I don't know anything, I'm not claiming anything absolutely certain, and I acknowledge that I could be wrong. My belief is proportional to the evidence for it.
Don, what about you? Does your wife or husband love you?
Yes, as far as I know.
Okay. There we go. There we go. I think there we have an answer. Okay, so, but there's no proof that he does, right?
Well, I could give the same sorts of evidence that Matt just gave, right? That,
Yeah,
that
but
that
it's
I
not
have
proof,
some,
right?
that I have
This is
some
why I've
evidence,
asked you
right?
4 times, what do you mean by proof?
But-
Because Don just gave you evidence, or cited that he could give the same evidence, and your response is, but it's not proof. What is it that you consider proof, and are you appealing to absolute certainty?
Because you cannot have any proof for that, right? You couldn't have proof. For
Would you
somebody who
answer
loves
the
you.
question, when you say you can't have the proof, what do you mean by proof, and are you appealing to absolute certainty?
Okay, let's appeal to absolute certainty then.
You're appealing, so you're asking, are we absolutely certain that our spouses love us?
None of us claim to have.
Then
be absolutely
my
certain
answer
about
is
anything.
no, because I don't think you can be absolutely certain about anything. And if the only
So why would you then say-
if you let me finish my sentence, and if your position is that we can't believe anything until we have proof that amounts to absolute certainty, then you have just done away with all knowledge.
Okay. Well, I just wanted a simple answer because the conversation.
I'm sorry, but not all questions
I know.
have simple answers. And it is the desire for a simple answer that is screwing you up.
No, it's not screwing me up. I'm just asking a question. You're getting all angry.
No. Okay. First of all, I'll calm down whenever I want to. The issue here is that you keep saying, "Can you prove it? Can you prove it?" You can't prove it, and you avoided. Let me finish. Let me finish. Jesus, you keep interrupting me. I'll put you on hold. You kept saying, "Can you hold?" I know you can still hear me because we tested this. You keep saying, "Can you prove it? Can you prove it?" You can't prove it. And every time I'd ask you, what do you mean by proof, and is an appeal to absolute certainty, it took forever to get you to acknowledge this. If you think that there is a pathway to absolute certainty, I am happy to hear it. I don't know how you can get there. I don't think that it's remotely relevant. And whether or not a belief is rationally justified, I don't even care whether or not it counts as knowledge. I certainly don't care if it counts as certainty. And philosophers will tell you that knowledge doesn't require certainty. The most conventional definitions of knowledge are justified true belief. There's nothing necessarily certain about it. But if your position is that absolute certainty is attainable and that no beliefs are rationally justified until that's a case that you need to make. My position is I don't see any path to absolute certainty, and I don't care because it doesn't matter. Because what determines whether or not a belief is rational is whether it is supported by evidence. And as we learned from Hume, the wise man apportions his belief to the evidence. You are convinced of the truth of a proposition in proportion to the supporting evidence. And that's why if I don't think the evidence leads to absolute certainty, I cannot be absolutely certain, but I can still be convinced and justifiably so. Did that make sense?
Okay, now, can I speak now?
That's why I asked a question and took you off hold.
Okay, thank you. 'Cause I didn't know that. Well, how I would answer that question, I mean, I kind of understand what you're getting to with the absolute thing, but how I would answer it would be this way with just anybody who's talking in the street. Would be if I love my wife, I would say yes, and if I know that she loves me, I would say yes, although I have no proof of it, right? but I choose to believe that because of the things that she does.
No, you don't choose
of
to
course-
believe.
Well, that's not. Well, that's my opinion.
Okay.
Okay.
I completely. So you think you can just choose to believe something?
I do. In that case, I do, because there's no way that I can know that she loves me.
Okay,
Well,
but
this is a
believe
colloquialism.
Okay,
So
so-
don't make too much of it, Matt.
well, it's wrong.
Yeah.
I will make
exactly.
much of it because it's wrong.
Okay.
We don't choose beliefs. Beliefs aren't an act of volition. When you believe something, it simply means that you accept that it's true or likely true. And your belief in it is the result of becoming convinced. It is not the result of, okay, I'm going to believe this. There's not only no reason to think that an act of volition is how beliefs result, there is good evidence that it cannot result that way. That in fact your brain reaches a conclusion long before you're ever consciously aware of it.
And then the rest of
When
your
you say
brain
that,
goes
it's
and
likely.
rationalizes it.
Yeah.
When I say that,
you
what?
say that it's likely. It's likely.
Yes.
That's how I feel. It's likely. It's possible, right? But
Yeah.
There's a possibility that she doesn't love me.
Yes.
But I'm saying that. But when I say she does love me, just like you say, because you told me that she does love you, it's because you're making a decision to make that claim, although you might be wrong, right? Because
I've already said this. I fully acknowledge that I could be wrong. This is what I'm saying is, this is what my belief is, and the level to which I'm convinced of it is proportional to the evidence supporting it.
Okay.
And your response was,
Yes.
well, you can't prove it, and it was an appeal to absolute certainty. And the answer to that is, what difference does that make? We can't be absolutely certain about anything.
I'm not saying that makes a difference. I'm just saying that you can't prove. I'm just saying, just follow my line.
What difference does it make whether or not I can prove it? This is the point that
to make? But can you allow me to finish my point instead of interrupting me? Just let me finish, and then you can hang up and continue with your.
I can hang up right now. I asked a question.
Gosh, Matt, what a guy. Okay,
Okay, bye.
can I?
Sorry. I don't know how many other ways to explain it, and I don't know why it's so difficult to drag an answer out when you're making assertions about, well, you can't prove it. What difference does it make if you say proof is a way to attain absolute certainty, and my position is I don't see any way to attain absolute certainty on anything?
Well, colloquially,
difference does it make?
atheists are asking for a proof of God, right? But what
No,
we're really asking for is,
okay.
what evidence do you have? And let's examine the evidence, and let's throw out the bad evidence and see what else you got. That's what we're really asking. But
Yeah.
colloquially, it's prove that there's a God because I don't believe it. So
Well, when you're asking someone to prove something, my context is not saying, "Are you absolutely certain?" I don't equate prove with absolute certainty. I tend to not use the word anyway. I ask why,
yeah,
give me the reasons,
the word
give me
has
the evidence.
baggage that we don't want, right?
But even when I do use the word, I'm not using it for absolute certainty, which is why I wanted to get to the difference between what we view for proof.
Mm-hmm.
Because if your entire thing is to say, you can't be absolutely certain about that, my response is, I agree. So what?
Yeah, I mean, we've said that very clearly several times. Yeah.
From the get-go. But yeah. I lost our
Let's take another caller. What do you
screen
think?
list. Yeah, we've got Aziz. Thanks for waiting.
Hi, hello.
Hey,
Are you there?
How are you?
what do you got?
Yeah, I am a little fan of this show. My friend watched this show, and he just talked to me about this show, and I forgot to introduce myself. I am Aziz. I am from Saudi Arabia.
Oh,
Yeah,
Welcome.
sorry. Yeah. Hi. Yeah. I just want to ask, do you believe that every religion cause the extremists that they have, like Islam? Do you believe that they cause Daesh, and the Christianity they cause KKK? Do you believe that?
Are the religions the sole source of it? Is that what you're asking?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Do you believe that?
No. I think
And
what we see from
what do you
religions.
think is the soul?
So I think there are people who tend towards ideas, and if their religion tends to support those ideas and can be interpreted in such a way to foster those, then that's how you get more and more extreme. I also believe that there are people who may not tend towards the extreme, but who, if they are surrounded by a particular religious sect that is trending extreme, that those people can easily be moved there, that we are malleable, we want to fit in with the crowd, and we know that you can convince people to commit atrocities by convincing them that what they're doing is actually good. If you could convince someone to kill someone else, even if they were never inclined to actually killing another person to begin with, if you systematically break down the humanity of the other person and place them in an enemy box and make a strong case for why the world needs this person to die, I think you can move people to extremes, and I think some people are more easily moved than others, and I think that there are probably some people who won't be moved to extremes, and they will end up leaving the religion that, if it gets too extreme, for a softer version. So it's a mix.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah. I just want to say that Islam have 99% of the Muslim are not extremists because they know that Islam are not if Islam is not about that.
So where did you get the 99% number?
Because there is 1.5 billion Muslim, and if you take just 1.5
sure.
billion Muslim.
It also depends on what you're going to define, how you're going to define extreme, because when we look at polls, we see, in different regions, support for female genital mutilation may be incredibly high, not to 99%, but 70, 80% in this region, and virtually non-existent in some others. And the idea of apostates being deserving of death or having the death penalty for, blaspheming Allah or whatever, support for that is far above 1% in almost any region. So that's why I was. What do you think is extreme?
I think do you know what is 1% of 1.5 billion? It is 100 million, and there is no 100 million terrorists.
So maybe terrorist would have been a better word.
One of the causes.
Than extremists.
So first of all, terrorists are different from extremists. They're probably the extremist of the extremists. But for example, there's a video online that you can go watch where you have a bunch of Muslims in the UK who are asked specific questions about what they would support and their views and what they would support as far as, stoning women and other honor-killing type things, as far as what they think is good. Yeah. Far greater than 1%. Whether or not they actually take action on that is a separate issue.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I would think that if let's say there's 50% of Muslims in a particular area advocate for death for apostates, they're not all going to run around. They're not all.
But these people do not reason. I am in the Mecca University, and we learn things there. And we when we sit with these terrorists, when we sit with these extremists, and we try to reason with them, they just shout and they don't want to reason because when you show them when you show them Islam, they realize that they are wrong, and they just shout or they just scream, and they said, you are a kafir, you are a kafir. And these people do not reason. These people, when you talk to them, these people do not reason.
Welcome to our world.
And that's
I would argue that they
that's
do and that everybody
so-
does, but what you're basically saying, I can understand that they are not responsive to your attempts to sway them.
Yeah, if you just sit with one of these extremists, one of these people that says, "Oh, honor killing is from Islam," and you sit with them with a real Muslim who knows.
Oh, a real Muslim.
Yeah.
How do we determine who's a real
They will
Muslim?
not.
How do we determine who's a
Well,
real Muslim?
Forgive me for using real Muslim. I meant like a person who studied Quran.
Okay, you don't think that there are extremists who study the Quran and have a different interpretation than perhaps you do?
I think that there is no extremists that have gone to Mecca University, because in Mecca University, the first thing they teach us is to search for errors in the Quran, and if we find one, we try to reason.
So you're saying there are errors in the Quran?
No. But
Wait.
if someone
Wait.
reads the
You
Quran,
said that the first thing they teach you is to look for errors in the Quran, and if you find one,
yeah.
but so nobody's ever found one.
Because I have seen many atheists and many Christians reading the Quran, and they just interrupt it with their own mind, and they just put aside the teaching of the Prophet. They put aside every explanation that the Prophet have put forward, and they just said, "Oh, this is Islam." But if they read,
That's not what I'm at. So, are there errors in the Quran?
no.
Then why would they teach you to look for errors if there aren't any?
They teach you to read the Quran like if an atheist read the Quran without any explanation from the Prophet.
They're teaching you
without any-
apologetics.
No. Okay, look. The Islam as a religion was taught to us by the Prophet, right?
I don't know. I know that's the claim.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Yeah.
But I don't know that. I don't consider the individual who's being cited an actual prophet.
Sure. He taught us Islam, and there is no verse in the Quran unless you find an authentic hadith that he talked about this verse. And I don't like when the people read the Quran and they interrupt it as they like. And that's what terrorists do. When you sit with the terrorists, they use verses like kill them wherever they found them. Mm-hmm. But if you see what the Prophet said about this verse, there was a time in the city of the Prophet where there was some non-believers came in the night and kill Muslims when they walk alone. So this verse came to guard the Muslim at night. But when the non-believers, some of the non-believers just quit doing that, the verse was like the verse you don't need it anymore. Do you know what I mean? And these terrorists do not see what the Prophet said, and that's what
So you do understand that you have a particular interpretation which you've been taught, which includes the idea that there are no mistakes, and these other people. Hang on.
Yeah.
These other people have a different interpretation. How does anybody tell which one is correct? And by the way, why was it okay to kill under that specific circumstance anyway?
Before you answer, let me ask the same question a slightly different way. Isn't the fact that the verse is ambiguous evidence that it's got errors?
Sorry?
If a particular
Can you
verse
repeat
can
the
be
question?
interpreted 7 different ways, what good is it?
Okay.
It's an error just from that perspective.
Yeah, yeah. But like when you read that verse alone and you don't see what like the author said about that verse, you are just interrupted with your own mind.
First of all,
Like,
I have
yeah.
I have no indication of some extra context from the author. But even if there was,
Yeah,
for example, if you go to Surah 489,
Okay.
this doesn't say anything about, hey, there are people who are killing Muslims, kill them. What it says is they wish that you should disbelieve, that there are people who are trying to sway Muslims away from religion. They wish that you should disbelieve as they disbelieve, and then you would be equal. Therefore, take note to yourselves, friends, so don't be friends with them until they immigrate in the way of God. Then, if they turn their backs, take them and slay them wherever you find them. Take not to yourself any one of them as a friend or helper. So this verse, absent any other context, says, hey, there are people who are trying to sway you away from Islam. Don't be friends with them. And if they convert to Islam and then move away, you are to kill them. It doesn't say anything at all about this is self-defense. This is about belief. And if they believed and they stopped believing, you are to take them and slay them.
Okay. And that's like and that's your interpretation when you.
I'm reading it.
Is that right?
Granted,
That's
I'm reading it
anybody's
in
interpretation.
English.
Please. That is your interpretation when you read that verse. Is that right?
What's wrong with my interpretation?
Yep. The correct interpretation is what the prophet says.
So the
Because
prophet didn't say this?
was-
The prophet didn't say this?
No, this is the word of God, but you gotta see how the prophet acted on it.
So,
Because,
no,
like,
I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. No, I don't. If this is the word of God and the prophet acted differently, then the prophet is in conflict with God.
Bro, please, look, God sends messenger, God says prophet with these books, so people does not, get these books and do whatever they want.
This isn't saying do whatever you want. This is saying kill apostates.
Okay, if you made a book, okay,
Yep.
if you made a book, and someone just took one line from that book, and that line was like saying, if someone doesn't believe.
So if I
in
read the
that,
next
and,
one,
you
does
would
it
say-
tell me that the last one was wrong and that I should interpret it a different way?
No.
I would not write a book that says kill people who don't believe. There's no way, if my goal is to tell people how to live their life,
Okay.
there is no way I would write that phrase at all, because even if I wrote it and intended to clarify it later or have some prophet clarify it, I don't know why prophets need to clarify the word of God, why the word of God isn't clear enough on my own. But if I'm God and I write a passage that says, if anybody believes and then turns away, you are to take them and slay them, I am a fucking monster. Hang on.
Yeah.
And if I later often offer to correct it, to say, no, I didn't really mean, then I'm a fucking idiot.
Bro, why do you swear? Why do you swear?
Why shouldn't I swear? I'll tell you exactly why I swear. Because I'm talking to someone.
We are talking politely here, bro.
No,
we are talking politely.
We are
here.
talking
Why do you
politely.
swear?
What is your objection to the word fuck? Were you
Islamic countries have different sensibilities.
So here's the thing. I will retract it. If I do that, I'm an idiot or a monster. We can remove the F word from it if that's what's really standing in the way. But the reason that I include those words is for emphasis, because we're talking about 1 billion people who are convinced many cases like you, that this is the perfect word of God, and then they do a tap dance about what is the correct interpretation, or what did the prophet do with regard to this, and they sit here and you make an argument like the one you just made to me, which is, hey Matt, if you wrote a book like this, I wouldn't write a book like this. It's inhuman. I would never say, go kill people. Wait a minute, I was just teasing. That's stupid, because if the later passage gets removed,
Or separated.
or if somebody says, no, the later passage doesn't clarify 489, it clarifies this other passage over here, now I'm leaving it all in the hands of people to interpret. And if what I've given them to interpret says kill people who stop believing, I'm an ass. I am a monster. I am instructing people in inhuman things. And the fact that you aren't willing to kill people doesn't mean that you have the correct interpretation.
God didn't leave people to make sense of this.
Did God write that passage?
He sent a prophet to enforce
How do you know that?
these law.
How do you know that? And what kind of God says that passage and then sends a prophet to correct it?
No, he didn't send a prophet to correct it. Like Moses.
So it hasn't been corrected?
Like Jesus.
Has that passage been corrected?
Let me complete my sentence. Let me complete my sentence, man.
Did God write that passage?
Yes.
And is that passage good as it stands?
Did you read the whole chapter?
Yes, I'm looking at this one here. This passage 489. Is it good as it stands?
You just read a couple of verses.
Correct.
And you interrupted.
So these were put in order by length. So are we talking about the original order, or are we talking about the one that's just slightly longer or slightly shorter than this one?
It doesn't matter what the rest of the passage says, unless something in the rest of the passage says, ignore 489.
No. Man, I just want to tell you this last thing, because are
you going to answer any questions, or are you just going to tell me one last thing? Did God write that?
You are not allowing me.
He did. He
said he did.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Is it good?
Yes.
And does it instruct you to kill non-believers?
No.
Then you're a liar.
Why?
Because it says, if they turn their backs, take them and slay them wherever you find them. That is an instruction to kill non-believers.
At any time, right?
I don't care. I don't care if he only meant to do it on Tuesdays or do it once every 50 years. It gives you an instruction to kill non-believers, doesn't it?
No.
Does that passage, Aziz? Aziz, does that passage?
You are not allowing me to finish any sentence.
Aziz, does that passage say to slay non-believers?
In what time?
Okay, now we're on to something, because you're acknowledging that it says slay the non-believers, right?
Yes, in what time?
I don't care what time. I don't care if it was 500 years ago or last Tuesday or last week. It says, it says, does it not slay non-believers, right?
Right. Did they just tell him?
Why can't you be honest about what your book says when I'm looking right at it?
Yeah. You are not.
Does Allah want you to lie on His behalf?
No.
Then does that passage instruct someone at some time to slay non-believers because they are non-believers?
At a specific time.
Okay. That passage instructs someone to slay non-believers at some specific time because they are non-believers, correct?
No.
Goodbye. Play the video back and go read it. The point that you're not getting.
The irony here is just so thick. I love it, because he's complaining that certain people are so extremist that they can't listen to reason, and here we are trying to reason with him. and we're not getting through.
I would be fine if someone said, yes, that passage was written by God and instructs people to slay non-believers because they are non-believers, but it only applies at specific times in specific ways. I would be fine with that, but he couldn't even acknowledge that clearly, or when he did, he then turned around and changed it. This is what apologetics does to people. This is what religion does to people. When you believe that this book is perfect, you have already fooled yourself.
And you've cashed in your integrity to believe that, right?
Because the thing is, you can say this passage tells people to kill non-believers at this specific time, although that passage does not say that. But you can say it only applied at a specific time. And my response to you is, I don't care when you think it applied. Killing someone for not believing is immoral, inhuman, and Allah, if he wrote that, is an unmitigated thug who knows nothing about humanity, and he has poisoned your ability to understand because your only goal is to make excuses and reinterpret it in a way that suits what you want it to be. And I don't care what you want it to be. And if there's a God, why does he need to send information in a book instead of talking to people? And if he writes down information in a book, why does he need to send prophets to do it? And why does he need to send prophets where, according to you, we're supposed to watch how the prophets follow the book? Because if the book says kill people and a prophet doesn't, I'd say he's in conflict with the book. And if your claim is, yeah, the book says kill people, but the prophet didn't, so we're going to follow the prophet, then why are you pointing to the book and saying it's perfect? Your entire process is a lie that people have fed you and you are feeding yourself, and it makes you sit there and do this tap dance in a discussion where when it says, if they turn their backs, take them and slay them wherever you find them, wherever, it doesn't say anything about whenever, it says wherever. It is not a stretch to think that some people with a bent towards extremism would look at that verse and say, yes, I am instructed by Allah to kill apostates. You can talk about other interpretations and clarifications later, but if you try to make the case that it's absurd to think that people will kill apostates based on this passage, you are the one who has deceived yourself.
Well, Thomas Paine, 200 years ago, made this very eloquent argument that God would never use a book to communicate a message. Language changes, the meanings of words change, they're subject to interpretation. You have to, there's this whole clarity problem. All of these holy books have this problem that they're subject to interpretation and spin, and so it's all bullshit.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And now that he's off the phone, any God that wrote that is a fucking idiot. All right, so we'll shift gears a little bit and go to Mark, who's been waiting patiently for like 2 hours from the
poor
Philippines,
guy.
an atheist. How you doing, Mark?
Hello, can you hear me?
I can. Thank you so much for patiently waiting through all that.
No problem. I've been waiting to, be on the show for many, many years now.
Well, you've only been on hold for 2 hours, so you don't get to count all the time that happened before.
I know.
All right,
Anyway,
what have you
I'm
got
Mark
for us?
Yeah, I'm Mark from the Philippines, and I was a fundamental Christian for 20 years since I was very young. And 3 years ago, I started watching Dark Matter 2525, the Atheist Experience.
Yeah, he's
and
awesome.
videos of, Sam Harris, Hitchens, and Dawkins. Well, actually, I am to talk about block voting.
Yeah?
Block voting. But I want to comment on, the previous callers, if it's okay.
Sure.
A while ago, there was this guy from Peru. His name is Carlos, I guess.
Yeah.
And he said that we cannot prove love. Right?
Cannot prove law?
Love.
Yeah, we cannot prove that our wives love us, he said. But I think we can. I mean, there are pieces of evidence we can use to prove love. As you said, there are testimonial evidence, or also we can test oxytocin, serotonin, and dopamine.
Yep, and we can put people under an MRI. I think that you can prove it in the colloquial sense, But his version of
Yeah.
proof required absolute certainty, and that's where it fell apart.
Yeah, I think so. And also something about Aziz
Yeah.
from Saudi Arabia. I'm having a hard time talking about religion with Muslims because they have this doctrine, taqiyya, where they can actually lie to people in order to convert them to Islam, which is
Slimy
really
tactics.
difficult for me.
Which is why I was happy to say that he was lying. And
Yeah.
I'm not claiming that I can read his mind and that he was intentionally deceiving.
Yes.
What I'm claiming is that his information is not accurate, and whether he's intending to deceive or whether he himself has been deceived, he has an obligation, if he's going to be making these claims and called
them
out, to make sure that he's being honest. But anyway, go ahead.
Yes. Anyway, yes, that's it. And I live in the Philippines, as you know, and in the Philippines is a very religious country. Among religious organizations in my country, and especially in the church I used to belong to, block voting is very common. The problem is that these churches openly endorse and compel their members to vote for a certain lineup of candidates for election, despite the constitutional mandate on the separation of church and state. So I actually have 3 questions, and maybe I have to end the call now. The first question is block voting by religious organizations allowed in the US? Number 2, if there isn't, was there ever a time when religious block voting was allowed? And number 3, this is for you, Matt. As a person who studied the Bible, do you think that block voting during elections by Christians is in line with biblical doctrines?
So
Thank you very much for
first of all, I want you
end the call now.
First of all, I just want you to explain exactly what you mean by block voting.
Block voting means that members of a church vote for a certain, group of candidates.
Sure, we gave you this particular list of candidates, and the church has instructed you this is who you're going to vote for.
So
that's
robotic
it,
action.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you will go to hell if you don't vote for these people.
So in the U.S., technically that would be illegal. It's still, I'm sure it happens in some places, and certainly I've been in churches where they, without citing an individual to vote for, will talk about an issue and how anybody who has this position on the issue is who you should vote for if you're going to be a good believer. And so you can get roughly the same effect. And what a lot of people end up doing is, vote straight ticket. I'm voting for all the Republicans, or I'm voting for all the Democrats because they have a party platform that is more consistent with my religion. But a church, as a nonprofit organization, actually saying this is who you should vote for, that would be illegal and losing their nonprofit status if you could prove it and prosecute it, which is near impossible in some cases. As far as whether or not that's consistent with Christianity, I think there's an interpretation of Christianity that would argue that yes, not so much for Catholicism, where the church is actually in charge, you could view it as the church could tell you or guide you towards this. Under Protestantism, where you're more talking about a personal relationship, you could still make an argument that no good Christian is going to vote for this individual or vote against this issue, whether it be abortion or death penalty.
I have a couple comments on that. One is, did they ever vote at all in the Bible? I don't think they ever voted.
No, but the interesting thing is that there's also a passage in the New Testament that says all of your leaders are appointed by
Yes,
God.
I was just going to bring that up.
So no matter how-
doesn't matter who
Yeah.
it is, they're appointed by God.
if Trump gets elected, or if Bernie Sanders gets elected, or Hillary Clinton gets elected, or Cruz gets elected, that's who God wanted there.
Right.
So
why are you voting?
you're supposed to just suck it up and go with it.
Yeah. The religious organization I belong to actually uses the verse in the New Testament where it is said that Christians should have only one judgment. That's what they use. Yeah.
Only one. Say it again, please.
Judgment.
The only consideration is whether or not it is consistent with the mind of God as they understand it, I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you very much for
Sure.
having me. Thank you.
Sure.
And thanks for waiting.
Take care, Mark.
Yes. Bye. Bye.
All right. Well, we got loads of theists,
So wonderful.
but I want to do one more atheist. We've got DJ in Hull. Thanks for waiting.
Hey guys, can you all hear me?
Yeah, we
Yes.
can.
Oh, nice one. It's good to be on the show.
Oh, thanks for calling. What do you got for us?
The question basically is, do you think deities were merely invented to excuse human desires?
I think that's probably one facet of it. I think from what we know, I mean, we don't know a great deal about how all religions formed, but we are uncomfortable with not knowing the answers to things. And so I think in many cases, deities were invented to serve as answers and explanations for the things that we don't know. And they also prey on our fears while expanding our fears. You know, we have a fear of being alone, not being cared for, not being loved, and what's going to happen when I die. And many religions attempt to cure all those by, in part, building a community, but also letting you know that even if nobody else loves you, there's a magical person or group of people outside of space and time who care and love you, and you will spend eternity with them. So but they also build the fears, and I had done a video on the use of fear previously. I think that there's also an aspect where they're intended to control behavior, not in a, we need to control the masses, so let's invent a religion. But as you have these religions, they evolve, and if there's an encouragement in there to not kill your fellow believer, then at least the people who are part of that religion are more likely to survive. And if there's an encouragement in there, as there is in the Quran, to kill non-believers or kill people who are apostates, then that kills off the opposition, which means that your religion can thrive even more.
I've heard
Survival of
about
the
the
fittest.
apostate thing recently. Can't remember where I picked it up.
Yeah, it's
The
much
reason I brought
disputed,
up
but not without foundation. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. The reason I brought up the data question was to address things like storytellers, because they can populate entire.
Yep.
If you're going to start writing a story, you've got to start with a blank slate, a black space, and then you've got to populate it with a world, then you've got to populate it with people, all the little details that you feel like sticking in there. You'd never ever do that as a person. You'd never do that just to watch your creation suffer. You'd never do that, would you? And in turn, that'd make the creation despise the creator, but then you'd be forcing the creation to hate the creator. It's a weird mess of jumbly mumbly, and that's just with human consequences. Normally stories are really pretty, and stories have happy endings, and stories are really nicely done.
Yeah, some of them do.
But for some reason,
We tell all kinds of stories, and I think religions sometimes tell stories that may have happy endings. The idea of going to a paradise is certainly a happy ending. I think Joseph Campbell's work on what is involved in the mythic characters, the stories that we love the most, the ones that appeal to us most strongly, I think they tend to fit what we see in many of the stories that religions have constructed. These, I love superhero stuff. Hell, I went and saw Deadpool last night. And we create stories of characters that are bigger than us that can hopefully address some of the problems that we have difficulty addressing. And in some cases, those things become believed as if they're real. And, this is where we get to the legend aspect. But now I'm just, speculating. Anyway, I've got a really loud hum coming from your side, so and we're running up on time, so I'm going to try to get to one more theist, but feel free to call back next week. I appreciate the call.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. It was great talking. Have yourselves a good night. Good show.
Thanks.
Sure. All right, and from Georgia, Forrest, you've been waiting. Thanks for waiting. Believed as if they're real, and this is where we get to the.
Uh-oh, we get the tape delay problem. Forrest, you're on the air.
Hello?
Hello?
Hey, Forrest, you're on the air.
Hey, I just wanted to ask if you guys are aware that atheism is actually a religion.
No, it's not.
Who do we worship exactly?
So
I'm
what,
confused.
what definition of religion are you using?
Well, my definition of religion is you have to have blind faith in what the scientists tell you in order to be atheist.
No, first of all, atheism is the rejection of the claim that there's a God. It's not necessarily a positive assertion that there is no God. And my position of not believing that a God exists isn't based on what scientists have told me. It's based on the fact that all the claims for God have failed to meet their burden of proof. And when I accept things that I find from science, I don't accept it blindly by any stretch of the imagination, and it's not contingent on what any scientist says. It's about the information and the evidence for it. And if I can't understand it, then I can't believe it. And if I'm not, you do realize that science includes these ideas of exploring the world, evaluating evidence, and then submitting that to other people to see if they can repeat your results, that the propositions need to be testable and falsifiable, and that the claims about gods don't fit science and don't fit any sort of foundation under which we should reasonably believe them?
See, your faith is in the scientists because
No.
things like evolution cannot be observed.
Science produces...
Evolution is observed, by the way, but I don't. What's your definition of faith? Because you say I have faith in science. My definition of faith is the excuse people give for believing something when they don't have I have good reasons.
But you're believing something just because someone told you.
No, I'm not. I'm believing the evidence. I'm not believing anything just because somebody told me. That's what you do.
There's no evidence to prove evolution. That's why it's only a theory.
No. Okay, first of all, a theory in science is the highest thing that it can be. There's nothing higher than a theory. A theory is a hypothesis that has been confirmed and tested, that is falsifiable, that is supported by all of the evidence, and is our current standing best explanation. It's not a pronouncement of truth. Evolution is observable. It makes predictions. We have found predicted Tiktaalik and other fossils. You just so you don't understand science. And you don't understand why we accept science. Do you go to the doctor?
No, I don't. Fossils don't prove anything.
You don't go to the doctor?
Well, I have about 5 years because
Sure.
I
Okay.
most of what I do.
How about a dentist?
Well, I haven't been to the dentist in about 10 years.
Okay, but you've been once, right?
Well, I mean, that's regardless of the fact that what you're putting blind faith.
Cavity. Have you ever had a cavity?
Never.
Okay. Have you ever been sick where you needed medical treatment?
Broken arm.
Okay, you broke your arm. How did you know it was broken?
The bone was sticking out.
Okay. How did you know how badly it was broken? Was there more damage inside that wasn't directly observable by looking down and seeing a bone?
I mean, I don't see how this is going to prove evolution. I mean, evolution...
I'm not trying to prove evolution. There's no way that in the course of this call and the remaining 5 minutes that we have left on the air, I'm not going to prove evolution to you because your mind is already such that nothing is going to convince you now. I'm talking about the nature of faith and evidence. I'm trying to get you to a point where you realize that there are things that you believe for good reasons and things that you might believe where you don't actually have good reasons, and those are the things that we would say you believe on faith.
Well, here's the thing. If science is not observable, then it's not actually science. It's something that has to be taken on faith.
Yeah. It's a really good thing that we have tons and tons and tons and tons of observable evidence for evolution.
Well, I would dispute that. I mean, there's no missing link.
Okay, do you have any expertise in this area?
Well, I've studied it for a long time.
Cool. Have you published any papers that debunk science, that debunk the science of evolution? Because the person who shows that evolution isn't actually scientific and is a faith-based position would get a Nobel Prize, would be published all over, it'd be front page news everywhere. Why haven't you done this?
Well, see, here's the thing. Scientists only give credence to peer-reviewed.
It's a conspiracy.
Yeah. So why don't? So before we get to the there's a conspiracy against you. Why don't you paper for peer review?
Because you pretty much have to go to like an Ivy League college, which you have to have hundreds of thousands of dollars, and then if
so why don't the
don't
intelligent
agree,
design advocates do this?
because if you're not in their little club, if you're not agreeing, if you're not writing papers they agree with, they're just gonna like blacklist you. They're gonna just throw out the paper.
So you think science? You think the science process is some sort of little club that only accepts the things that they already agree with?
Yeah, I don't agree with like most of science. I think most of science is bunk.
Okay, bye.
I believe.
Look up the science on how I disconnected your call, because that shit ain't bunk.
Yeah, I was going to make the point that that technology is the fruit of the labor of science, right? Every bit of technology that we have was from scientific investigation. Golly, that all works, and aren't we using a whole lot of it during this call?
I think the bulk of science is bunk, and that science is a little club where they shut out people who disagree. The fact of the matter, if you would bother to investigate at all, is that science thrives on the exact opposite. Attempting to falsify the findings of other scientists is the bread and butter of science. It's how we figure out whether or not we're deceiving ourselves. It is the people who overturn the long-held public opinions from other scientists to show this new discovery contradicts this. Those are the people that get the Nobel Prizes. Those are the people that are pushing science forward. Science is the antithesis of what you describe, but religion is exactly what you describe. It has a dogmatic process, and it says these are the things that one is to believe. And anybody who tries to come in and say, hey, wait a minute, the earth isn't actually 6,000 years old, that is anathema to religion. But if you could prove that the earth is closer to 6,000 years old than it is to 4.5 billion, science would accept it because it's about the evidence. Now, that's not to say that there's not corruption, information that comes from scientists. We know about people who falsified things. But to write off the method, to say that it's basically a conspiracy theory, that's bad enough. But when you say things like, I think the majority of science is bunk, I don't know what happened to you, and I don't know how to fix it in a phone call, but I certainly hope that you sit down and realize that you're lying to yourself, because you don't actually believe the bulk of science is wrong. You called on a phone or used a computer to get to us.
Try living a month without technology,
Yeah.
and see how far you get, and without reason. And then try living a month without religion and see how far you get. We're doing great without religion.
when the doctor tells you that you have a disease and offers you the x-rays, the scans, the blood test results, and things that you don't understand, I think you could make a case, hey, you're taking it on faith, which is why the smart thing to do is to get a second opinion. And opinion is science doing more. I don't see anybody getting a second opinion on what their pastor says very often. All right, last one for today. This will be fun. Hamish, thanks for waiting.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes.
Fantastic. I called to discuss religion and the role of God in United States politics.
Yep.
You see, I have been following the election process very closely.
Okay.
It's becoming interesting. And I fear that certain candidates, especially Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders, are...
I'm having a hard time hearing you.
I believe Bernie Sanders is not religious.
I believe you're correct. I think Bernie Sanders is openly not religious.
I find this to be deeply problematic.
And I could care less. As a matter of fact, I'm almost overjoyed, having spoken to you several times, that you find it problematic. See, one of the things is that Article 6 of the United States Constitution says that there will be no religious test for public office or trust. So Bernie Sanders, as a non-religious secularist, is eligible to run for office. Myself, as an outspoken atheist, is eligible to run for office. You, if you were an American citizen, would be eligible to run for office because individuals' beliefs about the supernatural, about whether or not there's a God, can't be used by the government as a litmus test as to whether or not they qualify to run. It can be used by the citizens to determine whether or not they vote for them. But I don't give a rat's ass about your concern about Bernie Sanders.
Now, that may be true in theory, but in practice, you have "In God We Trust" on the money.
Yeah, do you know when that was added to the money?
It was to do with the Soviets, correct?
Yeah, in 1954.
Yes, well, things change, and the Constitution was written a long time ago.
Yeah, and it's a living document, and when we want to do it, we can. But one of the things that hasn't changed is Article 6 that says there's no religious test for any public office of trust. Do you think there should be a religious test?
I believe so.
Then I'm glad you're not a citizen of the United States. Goodbye. That's it for this week's show. Thanks everybody for showing up. We appreciate the effort. I'm glad the phone's mostly worked out.
Yeah, it's working great.
And we'll see. I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks, but hopefully we've got everything set up technical so that those guys will all have as much fun as we did. Maybe they'll be doing 90-minute shows, maybe they won't. But we'll see you later.
Okay. Thank you. Had fun today.